At 1:24 in the morning, the buzzer echoed through the empty Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, and two men stood calmly outside the side entrance dressed as Boston police officers, claiming there had been a disturbance inside. The guard hesitated for just a second before opening the door, unaware he had just unlocked the most expensive crime scene in American history. If you love stories where scams unfold in silence and confidence beats guns, subscribe to Scamsphere now so you do not miss what is coming next. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from as this night begins. The moment the door closed behind them, the tone shifted. The men did not rush. They did not shout. One calmly told the guards that they were under arrest. The guards laughed, thinking it was a joke. It was not. Within minutes, both guards were handcuffed, blindfolded, and led down a staircase into the museum basement, where they were tied to pipes with duct tape. No alarms were triggered. No emergency call was made. Above them, history was about to disappear. It was March 18, 1990, St. Patrick's Day weekend in Boston. The city was loud, drunk, and distracted. Inside the museum, there was only silence. The thieves had 81 minutes alone inside one of the most valuable private art collections in the world. They moved slowly, deliberately, like people who had rehearsed this walk 100 times. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum was not built like a modern fortress. It was designed to feel like a Venetian palace, open and elegant. Security systems were outdated. Motion detectors covered limited areas. Cameras were sparse. The real protection was human trust, and that had already failed. The thieves walked directly to the Dutch room. They ignored some of the most famous paintings in the building. They did not touch a Michelangelo sketch worth tens of millions. Instead, they went straight for specific targets. Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee was cut from its frame. It was the only seascape Rembrandt ever painted. Another Rembrandt, A Lady and Gentleman in Black, followed it. The thieves were not gentle. They ripped the canvas from the frame with blades, leaving the frames hanging like open wounds. Next came Vermeer's The Concert. Only 36 Vermeer paintings are known to exist. This one was priceless. It vanished without ceremony. Degas sketches were rolled up. A Manet portrait was taken. 13 works in total disappeared that night. The estimated value at the time was around $200 million. Today, experts place the value at over $500 million, making it the largest art theft in American history. Not a single alarm went off. Down in the basement, the guards listened to footsteps above them. They could hear frames being removed, footsteps crossing floors, doors opening and closing. They waited, helpless. When the thieves finally left through the same door they entered, the museum returned to stillness. When police arrived later that morning, they found a scene that confused everyone. There was no smashed glass, no chaos, no panic. Just empty frames staring back from the walls. Investigators realized quickly that this was not a robbery driven by impulse. It was a confidence crime. The FBI took over the case within hours. Agents studied the footage that existed, but the cameras had not captured much. The thieves wore fake mustaches. Their uniforms were convincing, but not authentic. The badges were cheap replicas. Still, it was enough. Investigators immediately asked the most uncomfortable question. How did the thieves know exactly where to go? They skipped famous pieces that any amateur thief would grab. They took specific works that suggested inside knowledge or guidance from someone who understood art valued deeply. Another disturbing detail emerged. One of the motion detectors in the museum had been triggered repeatedly earlier that week and ignored. Security complacency had settled in quietly. Within days, theories flooded in. Organized crime, foreign collectors, insurance fraud. Some believed the thieves planned to ransom the paintings back to the museum. That never happened. No note arrived. No demand was made. The art vanished into silence. Boston's criminal underworld became a focal point. The FBI suspected mob involvement, particularly figures connected to art theft and smuggling. One name surfaced repeatedly: Bobby Donati. He had connections, knowledge, and motive. He was murdered the following year, stabbed to death, taking answers with him. The museum reopened with the empty frames still hanging. They were left intentionally, a reminder and a message. The frames remain there today, waiting. Years passed. Leads dried up. Tips came in waves and disappeared just as fast. The case became a legend, whispered about in law enforcement circles. The most chilling realization settled in slowly. Whoever took the art never intended to enjoy it publicly. These paintings were currency, leverage, bargaining chips, in a world where silence is worth more than money. The Gardner Museum heist was not about greed alone. It was about control. About walking into a sacred space and leaving with history while everyone else slept. And the most terrifying part was this: the thieves had never been seen again. Years passed after that cold March night in 1990, and the Gardner Museum heist transformed from a case into an obsession. FBI agents rotated in and out, each team inheriting the same empty walls, empty frames, and unanswered questions. New detectives arrived full of energy and determination, confident they would crack it. By the time they left, frustration and fatigue replaced hope. Empty hallways, silent alarms, and invisible criminals had created the perfect storm for an enduring mystery. The paintings were gone, but their absence was louder than anything else in the museum. The investigation quickly revealed that this was not an ordinary theft. Art of this caliber cannot simply be sold openly. The Rembrandts alone were worth tens of millions each, and Vermeer's The Concert was priceless, one of only 36 in the world. These works were too famous to disappear into a private collection. Investigators began to theorize that the paintings had been stolen for leverage, a form of currency in the criminal underworld. They were bargaining chips for deals, immunity, or payment. The FBI quietly believed that the stolen works had traveled through Boston's shadowy criminal networks. Passed hand to hand, hidden and guarded by those who understood their power. Boston's organized crime scene became a central focus. Names circulated. Bobby Donati, a known mob figure with violent tendencies and a history of inside information, emerged repeatedly in FBI briefings. Donati had connections that made him a credible suspect. He understood both the city and its criminal ecosystem. But he died violently in 1991, stabbed in a dispute unrelated to the heist. His death left more questions than answers and took one of the strongest leads with him. Other suspects emerged in piecemeal fashion, often incarcerated for unrelated crimes, often refusing to speak. The silence surrounding them was as chilling as the theft itself. David Turner, another potential suspect, had been arrested for attempting a separate theft at the museum years before. He too had impersonated a police officer. The parallels were eerie, but nothing directly tied Turner to the 1990 heist. Evidence remained circumstantial. Eyewitness accounts were vague, timelines were inconsistent, and physical evidence was non-existent. No fingerprints, no clear video footage, no tools left behind. The thieves had left only empty frames and an air of perfect planning. As the years went by, the statute of limitations for committing the theft expired in 1995. That meant anyone directly involved could no longer be charged with stealing the artwork itself. Possession remained illegal, but the law's limitation left the paintings in a sort of legal purgatory. They were radioactive objects, too valuable to display, too illegal to move, too dangerous to hold. This legal reality created tension in the criminal ecosystem. Criminals knew the paintings were worth fortunes, but ownership came with enormous risk. The art became untouchable, frozen in time, and hidden from public view. Over the next decade, the FBI shifted focus from tracking individual thieves to monitoring art networks. Tips arrived constantly from informants and casual witnesses. Some claimed to have seen crates labeled as museum transport in hidden warehouses. Others spoke of paintings stashed in private homes or even overseas, moved quietly under the radar. None of the tips led to recovery. Investigators began to believe that the artwork had been deliberately dispersed, split among multiple parties to reduce risk. One painting might sit in a climate-controlled basement, another rolled and stored in a damp garage, another hidden in a collector's private collection. Each theory was plausible, yet unprovable. In 2013, the FBI made a rare public announcement. They claimed to know who was responsible for the robbery and had a theory on how the crime had been executed. Names were not released, no one was arrested. The paintings were still missing. This announcement seemed to serve more as a warning than as closure. Whoever held the stolen works was suddenly in a much more precarious position. The message was clear: we know you and we are watching. While the investigation continued, museum officials grew increasingly desperate. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum offered a $10 million reward for information leading to recovery. International outreach was undertaken, contacting art dealers, auction houses, and private collectors. Posters, newsletters, and online campaigns were used. Even with these efforts, no painting reappeared. The frames remained, an eerie reminder of the night when human trust had failed the security system. Visitors stared at them for minutes at a time, imagining the masterpieces that should have hung there. The empty spaces became exhibits of loss, obsession, and intrigue. Experts also began to fear a more permanent loss. Paintings are fragile. Canvas can warp. Paint can flake. Light, heat, and moisture destroy works quietly. If any of the stolen art had been improperly stored, there was a significant chance it had already deteriorated beyond repair. The thought that centuries of human creativity might have been destroyed in basements, attics, or warehouses out of neglect or fear haunted museum curators and investigators alike. Despite the decades that passed, some evidence suggested the art remained in Boston. Informants whispered about moving paintings in trucks at night, of private collectors too afraid to display them. Others suggested international smuggling operations, but these theories never gained traction. One thing was certain: the crime had been planned with extraordinary attention to detail. The thieves knew the layout of the museum, the security schedules, the blind spots. Their confidence and preparation made the heist almost surgical. The heist has endured as a cautionary tale. It is cited in security textbooks, taught in criminology courses, and discussed in law enforcement circles as the archetype of a perfect crime. Yet the public fascination continues. Documentaries, books, and interviews have revisited the robbery repeatedly, keeping its memory alive. The Gardner heist is the ultimate example of human ingenuity used for deception. A crime committed not with brute force, but with subtlety, confidence, and a deep understanding of human psychology. The haunting reality is that we may never see the artwork again. Investigators know the thieves, or at least some of them, are dead. Some paintings may have been destroyed, some may remain hidden, and some may still move quietly through private hands. The notion that the stolen art may survive but remain unseen for decades adds a dark romanticism to the story. It is a crime that literally has altered history without ever being fully solved. Even today, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum maintains the empty frames as placeholders. They have never replaced the stolen works. The frames are a living reminder of vulnerability, of human error, and of audacity. They invite visitors to imagine what could have been, to consider the audacity of two men walking calmly through halls of priceless art, removing history itself. The Gardner heist also demonstrates the limits of law enforcement, the vulnerability of human trust, and the enduring fascination with crimes that are never fully solved. It is a study in human behavior as much as criminal planning. Confidence, timing, patience, and knowledge became the tools of the thieves. Security systems, cameras, and procedures were secondary. The human element, once exploited, became the weakest link. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of the story is the silence surrounding it. No ransom was demanded. No manifestos were left. No message was sent. The world was robbed of masterpieces, and the perpetrators vanished into obscurity, leaving no trace other than memory, speculation, and empty frames. That silence is the final theft. It is both audacious and terrifying, a crime that continues to reverberate decades later. If you think this story was thrilling, remember that it is only the beginning. Crimes like this do not simply fade away. They leave behind questions, theories, and a lingering sense of suspense. The Gardner Museum heist is a reminder that some of the most extraordinary crimes are not about violence or speed. They are about patience, confidence, and exploiting human weaknesses. And if you want to know more stories that defy belief where scams, audacity, and human cunning collide, subscribe to Scamsphere, because the next story will challenge your assumptions, shock your mind, and make you question everything. You think you know about crime?